Algonory, Algonory, Algonory.
As soon as she had finished her sentence, her sister called out, "Silence!" There was a far-off shore, running for miles and miles along the way, stretching all the way back to the Cheshire Cat. "Are you the Cheshire Cat?" said one of the larks. "Yes, if you'd like," said Alice.
"Well then, we shall, perhaps, have you taken to the pool," said the cat. "It's very hot here, and it's putting me out."
"It's putting me out very awfully," said Alice. First, she checked herself hastily on the spot. "What's wrong with my eyes?" she said to the purple pig.
"Are you a dragon or a human being?"
the dragon ventured to ask, still yawning.
"What is the one thing you dread?"
And it lifted up both its paws and snorted so loudly that the poor little thing seemed to have drowned. "One thing, perhaps," said Alice, "is that it isn't very civil of you to tease. In fact, I wonder if you dare tease at all, when you're so nearly beating the shit out of each other." "I'm not an astronomer," said Alice. "I'm a crab."
"What's a crustacean, then?"
said the frog. "Why," said Alice, "it's very hard to make out all the different sizes of crabs, you see. I used to swim in a little pond about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and with one of my fingers I can cut through wood. You know, because I'm so hard on the skin, I sometimes venture to say to people, 'You're very hard on the brain.'"
"But you're very hard on the eyes too,"
said the frog. "It's not at all clear what a lobster does at the beach," said Alice.
"Would it be hard to carve out a house out of wood?"
inquired the frog. "Well, that generally happens at sea, I think," said Alice. "A lobster will carve a house out of the sea, as I have said. There's no room for any more work on the end of the sea. You can keep working, you know, as usual, but you should stop, as the earth is getting very unstable." "It's really dreadful to be a lobster," Alice thought to herself. "The constant fight of wills and circumstances. I do believe in a living lobster, you know, because of his countenance and his enormous grin." "I do believe in a living lobster," said Alice, "because his jaws are so disproportionately large, and his grin is such a comfort."
"Not in the slightest," said the frog. "He only speaks with his mouth." "Then you should call the police," said the frog, turning to Alice for an answer.
"And how many officers do you know?" the guard went on in his usual tone.
764,
said the frog.
"That's a good beat," the guard remarked. "But how many hours a day do you do your business?"
The frog shook his head.
7 hours a day,
he said.
"Of course," said the guard.
And they began banging away at each other with such a fury that Alice ventured to joke that it was the best way out of the wood.
"It's the sort of thing people do when they're not working," the Mock Turtle remarked.
"It's a regular part of our business, after all," said the Gryphon.
"It's sort of part of our being," said the frog. "It's a kind of a part of the I having a personal experience."
"And what is the personal experience of I?" continued Alice.
"In your sense of the word," the Mock Turtle replied, "it's the sort of existence one can have if one doesn't, in other words, have a sort of existence belonging to another being."
She listened as the Mock Turtle spoke, and then she picked up the hooker as the song began. "Whew! It was far tasting, thought poor Alice, and very good tasting. But there was something in the air above her, quite different from the usual way she felt. It was the distant evening, and her heart went out of tune with every word she said. She had never tasted anything that wasn't sweet. And she looked down and saw the rabbit. He looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were always full of smoke. But I hadn't the least idea what was going on in the house, when all around me were those little eyes of yours, half shut and half glazed, staring into the sky. I see them only as shadows, said the rabbit. While she was trying to obey the orders in her head, she suddenly called out to the turtle, who was sitting on the other side of the court, and she said in an angry tone, "Turn them over."
"It's no use speaking in tongues," said the turtle, "as it's very hard to understand."
Shardcore.